Okay, you ready?
Hey, this is Denise and Brandy. We're just kind of wing it today. We want to jump on here and talk about a few things, but if you haven't been following us, we finished up with John, and yeah, so we wanted to talk about Easter and things leading up to Easter, and so today we thought we'd talk about Passover. Not sure if you guys know what that is, but uh,
So,
I'll let Denise go ahead
apologies.
and
I'm all
start, and let's.
stuffy over here. I'm a cold sore. I'm a mess, but
Oh,
we're here. So,
golly. Do you want me to start, Denise?
yeah, sure.
Okay. So, the original Passover is back in Exodus 12. Denise had brought that up. The Exodus 12. This is when Moses went to Pharaoh to try to help release the Israelites from the Egyptians. They were slaves there, so they wanted out. So Moses went to Pharaoh, and correct me if I'm wrong at all, Denise, but Moses went to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh, his heart was hardened. There was 10 plagues that, God put on Pharaoh and the area. And we can go over that sometime. There's a very interesting story I have behind that I found with all the plagues.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
yeah. So he had gone to Pharaoh, and on the last plague, he had wanted the firstborn of every household killed. So Pharaoh had his oldest son, and that he loved. But so those Israelites, in order for their firstborn to not be killed, they had to kill this lamb and put the blood over top of the door. And that way they would be passed over. Hence the whole Passover
By
thing.
the angel of death, right?
Yep. Am I missing anything else as we go?
No, I think you're right. And then just to bring up what we've talked about in the past is how they were not it was like specific in how they needed to sacrifice this lamb, and they were not to break any bones. And then later on, when Jesus was crucified, he was the Lamb of God, and none of his bones were broken either. I just love that.
I know, and it had to be at the exact same time as Passover at Jesus's time.
Yeah.
So the timing is everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, anyways, so Jesus he died over around Passover. It's a 7-day feast that is still kept to this day. This year it starts April 5th through the 13th. They still carry the traditions, but the main thing is that this is when Christ died for us.
Yep, that's right. Just a little bit of information I'm pulling from the Bible recap. God, when Passover occurred, that was God's final plague of those 10 plagues that he had sent. And he said to sprinkle the blood on the left, right side, and the top of their doorways, marking their homes. And this is interesting. So because of the blood that drips to the ground from the top of the doorway, this forms the shape of a cross. Wow.
Okay.
I wouldn't have thought about that. I wonder how, I'm trying to picture this. You would think, so they have it on the left, right, and top. I'm just thinking, how would this form a cross?
I can't picture that either.
I can't picture that. Well, maybe because if, Jesus' arms were out and he had been bleeding, there was blood dripping all along that top area. I don't know. Yeah, that one's interesting.
I'm not sure the whole
Yeah,
Passover
and
thing is
God said that night to eat dinner quickly and don't even make bread that rises and stay fully dressed. It's interesting.
unleavened bread. They still do that.
Oh,
The
okay.
unleavened bread.
Huh. Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
So, the thing that I wanted to talk about was the, I had found that when they had done these plagues, that each time Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and so then God would send another plague. And I have the list of the plagues, and from what I gather from this site, these plagues were symbolization of these certain gods that these Egyptians worshipped.
Yeah.
So, when, the god Hapi, Hapi, this was the Egyptian god of the Nile. So, and then the plague that God came was there that sent was the water was turned into blood. So God did not want any other gods or goddesses worshipped, just
Mm-hmm.
himself.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's the other ones. There's the goddess of Heket, Heket. This is the goddess of fertility, water, and renewal. And this Heket goddess had the head of a frog. So this Egyptian, so then God, what did he do? He sent a plague of frogs.
So many frogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through a couple more.
Yeah.
And then, I know. So there was the god that they worshiped named Geb, Geb. He was the Egyptian god. He was over the dust of the earth. And then the plague that was given was lice from the dust of the earth. So the Lord commanded Moses, and Aaron was told to stretch forth this rod. And when he did this, lice throughout the land, and both people and the beast. So it's just crazy to me how all these kind of correspond.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Wow.
Yeah, there's more. There's 10 of them. There's 10 of them that I did find.
Mm-hmm.
So, the last one, and I can go over these sometimes if anybody wants us to, but so there was the one of one of the last two. One was called Ra, R-A, and this was the sun god. So then what the plague was, 3 days of complete darkness. Like, listen, I am the only God.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Pharaoh. He was the ultimate power of Egypt. The Egyptian plague was the death of the firstborn. So in all this, I just think, God wanted himself to be worshipped, not these other gods or goddesses.
Right.
Anyways, that's all I have. I don't know if you have anything else.
Another couple of points that I'm seeing in this book that's cool. So after the angel passes through, the Egyptians drive the Israelites out, just like God had promised. And they leave with fistfuls of jewelry and fine clothing, just like God had also promised. In the middle of the night, 2 to 3 million Israelites fled Egypt. Some non-Israelites joined them as well, and we find out later that some Egyptians went as also. God says to treat them like family as long as they're circumcised, because that was in the old covenant, right? And they had been in Egypt for 430 years, but don't worry, God isn't 30 years late for two possible reasons. 400 years could be a generality and not down to the minute timeline, or the first 30 years may have included the time when Joseph first moved his family there.
So you said that they were there for 400 years. What do you say that apart again?
So according to this, I think was there a prophecy saying they'd be there for
That's what I'm looking
years?
up, but I wanted you to repeat what you had said so that I could.
So according to this, it says they had actually been there for 430 years. But they're saying that, two possible reasons. 400 could have just been a general number that was like an estimate. Or they're saying the first 30 years may have included the time when Joseph first moved his family there before the second Pharaoh enslaved them.
I don't know, because it does talk in Genesis 15:13. It says, "Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there."
Okay.
Hence this.
Yeah. Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So that's all I have though on the Passover.
All right. Well, we'll continue
Yeah.
on next
Thank
time.
you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.